All right. This is a lecture for 441 on the executive branch. So, um, uh, Mr. Fan said you guys haven't gone over this. This will be on your. I'll create a topic page for all this stuff, but this is the note outline you'll use, and just fill in the stuff. It's set up the exact same way as the PowerPoint, so you just fill in stuff um, that I say. Okay. So, all right, let's do this. So, the executive branch is the presidency and the bureaucracy. And as soon as this freaking thing loads up, there we go. Okay. So, from the Constitution, the president has certain formal powers. The first one is ordinance power. Okay. That is what gives the president the power to issue executive orders. Okay, so ordinance power, issue executive orders. Okay, executive orders are directives from the president that have the force of law that do not require congressional approval. Executive orders are directives or orders from the president that have the force of law that do not require congressional approval. President Trump has used executive orders for some of his initiatives. President Obama uses, right, every president uses executive orders. Okay, they're a way around the legislature. Appointment power. The president can appoint people to positions in the federal government. Okay, the president can appoint people to positions in the federal government. Heads of executive departments. So that's the cabinet members, like Secretary of State, head of the State Department. Secretary of Defense, head of the Defense Department. Okay. Attorney General, head of the judicial. So he can appoint heads of executive agencies. He appoints top military officials. Okay. He appoints to heads of regulatory agencies. So, like the head of the EPA, the Environmental Protection. So, heads of bureaucratic agencies. And finally, he can appoint judges. Okay. Now, all of those people that he can appoint, he can fire with the exception of judges. He cannot fire judges. Judges are appointed for life. The only way you can legally get rid of a judge is through impeachment. And that's not the president, that would be Congress. Okay. So appointment power is appointing members to positions in the federal government. Removal power. Okay. Like I just said, he can remove people, he can fire people. Okay. President Trump, huge fan of firing people. Okay. He's gotten rid of attorneys general. He has gotten rid of secretaries of defense. He's gotten rid of secretaries of state. Okay. He can remove them. Like I said, the only position he can't remove that he can appoint federal judges. Okay. Emergency power. Okay. When the president declares a state, when the president declares a state of emergency, that gives him more powers. Okay. Typically, the only time we're going to declare states of emergency today is if it's a natural disaster. Okay. So when Hurricane Sandy came through, crushed Lake New Jersey and the eastern seaboard, okay, President Obama said, all right, listen, I declare a state of emergency. I need FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. I need you to get all of your stuff over New Jersey right away. Don't worry about paperwork. Just get it there. We'll figure it out later. Okay. He had that ability because of emergency power. Okay. President Trump declared a state of emergency during the protests during the summertime over George Floyd. Okay, so you can declare a state of emergency in times of civil unrest. More often than not, civil unrest means natural disaster at this point in time. However, we have actually had some riots where the president has declared a state of emergency. Okay. Executive privilege. The president has executive privilege with individuals that he talks to, meaning that he does not have to tell Congress what he or who has told him what. Okay. That you can say, hey, listen, I'd love to tell you what was told to me, but I have executive privilege. Why do you have executive privilege? So that the president can get unfiltered information without threat of retribution from others. Why does he have executive privilege? So the president can get unfiltered information, advice, and consent without those individuals having potential retribution from others. So if I'm the president, listen, I got to get information from all these people so that I know what's going on in these bureaucratic departments, in these bureaucratic agencies. If everything they tell me is on the record and everyone knows about it, then they might not be as honest. Executive privilege does not work in criminal or civil cases. So if it's an impeachment trial or if it's a criminal case, okay, like in a court of law, the president can't use executive privilege. Diplomatic powers. Okay, diplomatic powers is I will say, hey, listen, you're an ambassador. Okay, I recognize this country. All right, I recognize this ambassador from this country. Notice how we do not recognize Pakistan, or not Pakistan, Palestine as a country. So we've used our diplomatic power to say, hey, listen, Palestine, we do not recognize you as a sovereign nation. All right, President Trump uses diplomatic powers to move the embassy, the U.S. embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. Okay. All right, more presidential powers. All right, let's do legislative. State of the Union. SOTU is State of the Union. So every year the president issues a State of the Union. So that's him telling Congress, these are my legislative priorities. Okay, State of the Union is seen as like it's like a cannon that says, listen, boom, this is what the president wants to talk about. So State of the Union, the president telling Congress, telling the nation, these are my legislative priorities. And that happens once a year, typically in it's in January. Okay. Vetoes. Let's do vetoes first. All right. President, bill comes to his desk. He can either sign it or he can veto it. Okay. He cannot veto part of a bill. Okay. He cannot veto part of a bill. He has to veto the whole thing. All right. So there is a bill coming to President Trump's desk right now, the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. That's the bill that gets passed every year with the federal budget for the military. Well, Trump says he's going to veto it if they tack on that you got to rename all of the bases named after Confederate generals, and that's in the bill right now. President Trump can't do a line item veto where he would draw a line through part of the bill and say, listen, I just don't want that part. If he vetoes it, he vetoes everything. Okay. We'll skip over signing statements. President Trump hasn't used those, so let's not get into that. But so you can have a veto. You cannot do the line item veto. You could do a pocket veto. A bill becomes law within 10 days if you don't do anything to it. Okay? So if Congress passes a bill, president doesn't do anything with it in 10 days, it becomes law. Well, if there's less than 10 days in a session, he can just keep it in his pocket. And when the session ends, the bill dies. That's called a pocket veto. You literally don't do anything to it. Pocket vetoes only work if there's less than 10 days in a session. Okay? Why would you do this? All right. Well, you're probably worried that if you do veto it, that Congress is going to overturn it. So you keep it in your pocket. All right. All right. Judicial powers, pardons and commutations. The president can pardon, he can commute any federal crime with one exception, and that's impeachment. Okay. You can pardon murder, you can pardon treason, you can pardon drug possession, you can pardon anything that's a federal crime with the exception of impeachment. You cannot pardon impeachment. Okay. If I give a pardon, all right, that crime, it's a legal forgiveness of a pardon is a legal forgiveness of a crime. That means that it's wiped off the books. It's not a get out of jail free card for you can't just be like, hey, I got a pardon, I can commit any crime I want to. No, 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 no. It's whatever crime was in that pardon, wiped off. A commutation is crime still stays on your record, but the sentence is lessened. So if you were supposed to be in there for 10 years for something, you've been in there for 4, that's good enough. That's a commutation. Okay. President Trump, huge fan of pardons for his buddies. Okay. President Obama, most commutations since FDR. And the overwhelming majority of those commutations were for nonviolent drug offenses. So you got caught with marijuana, you were arrested, you were put in President Obama commuted that sentence as long as it was nonviolent. Okay. Only federal crimes. President can't pardon state crimes. All right. That would be a governor that could do that. Military powers, he's the commander in chief. Okay. He's the top. He's the head of the military. All right. He's the civilian leader of the military. The Warrior Powers Resolution in 1973 was an attempt to limit presidential power during conflict. It was passed after Vietnam. Okay. Warrior Powers Resolution in 1973 says 3 things. Okay. Number 1, president's got to inform Congress within 48 hours of any putting troops in into combat situations. Okay, and it's not like a text. It's not like LOL just invaded, Libya. No, no, no. Formal acknowledgement to Congress. Okay, that's number 1. You got to tell them within 48 hours. All right. War Powers Resolution says, all right, fine. That military engagement, you got 60 days. That's it. And then number 3, you can re-up that if you want to. So it's like you're leasing a war. Like, you lease a car for like a year. You can lease a war for 60 days and then you can apply to like, all right, I'll do like another 60 days. Okay. The whole point was we didn't want to get into like a 20-year war again with like we did with Vietnam. Okay. War Powers Resolution, probably unconstitutional, never been challenged in court. Maybe thinking to yourself, hey, we've been in a war in Afghanistan and Iraq for about 20 years. Well, that's because of AUMFs. Congress passed an authorization to use military force. An AUMF is an authorization to use military force. And so there was an AUMF done immediately after 9/11 in 2001 that allowed president and the federal government to bring to justice those involved with the attacks on the terrorist attacks on September 11th. Well, we've used that AUMF to attack Afghanistan. Okay. We also used that AUMF to attack Iraq because we said the federal government, George W. Bush's presidency or White House said, hey, Iraq was giving weapons of mass destruction to terrorists. Now, that has since been debunked, but we are still in Iraq. Okay. We've also used that AUMF to attack Pakistan, okay, and other countries in that area with drone strikes, okay, since 2001. So the AUMF supersedes the War Powers Resolution in this instance. Okay. All right. Informal powers, the bully pulpit. Nobody uses the bully pulpit better than President Trump. Nobody. All right. How does he use his bully pulpit? Twitter. Okay. That's how he influences the people. So the bully pulpit is how your ability as president to influence the people. President Trump does it with his rallies and on Twitter. And he is excellent. Guy got over 70 million votes. Okay, so he's excellent at using the bully pulpit. Okay. President has a high approval rating. Okay, people are going to listen to him. President has a low approval rating. Less people are going to listen to him. So it depends on how popular you are and typically like where you are in the presidency. Like right after you get elected, everyone loves you. And then you kind of like decline. All right. So you'll get your chance to get stuff done happens early on in your presidency, less so later on. All right. That's the end of round one. And how do I stop this?